So far, we've spent some time focusing on techniques that we can use to help our dogs develop a positive emotional response to some neutral objects through classical conditioning. We know that we'll be able to use these same techniques to help our dogs change the way they feel about the things that they fear. Since our dogs have already made a negative association with certain things, these scary things are no longer neutral objects. In other words, they already mean something to the dog. This means that instead of classical conditioning, we'll actually be doing classical counter conditioning. We'll be using the same techniques that we've been doing with our classical conditioning exercises, but it'll be a little tougher to create that positive emotional response because we're starting from a place of fear instead of a place of neutrality. And that's where desensitization, or DS, comes in. Remember that desensitization involves exposing your dog to the scary thing in very small doses, always ensuring that your dog remains under threshold. This means that he won't be feeling fearful while exposed to the scary thing, because the exposure will be at a level that does not cause him to feel threatened. If he feels fearful, you've gone too far, too fast. Yeah, your goal is to help your dog change the way that he feels about the scary thing through counter conditioning, but because he's already afraid of it, you need to approach this slowly and systematically. And that's where the DS techniques come into play. In the previous exercises, you were able to present a neutral object to your dog very easily, and you followed immediately with food, or a gentle massage, or play. The trouble with trying to apply the same classical conditioning technique with the scary thing is that you can't just present it to your dog without causing him to feel fearful. So you'll need to start from a point that is far easier for your dog to handle. And then slowly, you'll increase the amount of exposure, all while continuing to apply the conditioning technique that you've already been practicing. So, where do you start? It's easy to say, keep your dog below his threshold, but what exactly is his threshold? And that's your next assignment. You need to know where to begin. You need to identify your dog's starting point. How far does he need to be from the scary thing in order to feel comfortable? Consider these examples. Let's say your dog is afraid of getting his nails trimmed. At what point do you notice that he's beginning to show signs of discomfort? Is it when you pick up the clippers? When you say, "Come on, Fido, time to do your nails"? Is it when you're physically touching his paws? Or when you sit down facing him on the floor? Let's say your dog's afraid of his harness. Does he begin to show discomfort when he sees you approaching where you keep the harness? He sees the harness in your hand? Or he sees the harness at all, whether it's on the floor, in your hand, on the table, or wherever? Is it when you begin to approach his head with the harness in your hand? Is it when he hears you say, "Want to go for a walk"? Let's say your dog is afraid of strangers. Does he begin to show discomfort when he's outside and sees someone 50 meters away? Or 100 meters away? Yards, meters, close enough. Is it only when the person is moving or walking towards him? Is it when someone is standing behind him? Or only when the person reaches out towards him? One more example. Let's say your dog is afraid of the car. Does he begin to show discomfort when he hears the sound of your keys? Or he's within 10 meters of the car while outside? Is it when he sees the car door opening? Or is it when he hears the engine start? Is it when you say, "Want to go for a ride in the car"? You get the picture. Now that you know what some of the more subtle signs of discomfort can be, it's time to establish your starting point. If you pick up the clippers and your dog licks his lips, yawns, and leaves the room, you've gone too far. That's not his starting point. He's no longer below threshold. You're seeking to identify that moment just before he begins to show signs of discomfort. And look at it this way. It's safer to start too far back than to start too far ahead. In the nail clipper example I just gave you, you will probably need to do quite a bit of work without even introducing the clippers into your program for a while yet. Thinking back at the task analysis that you did for hand washing way back in the beginning of the course, try to imagine what a nail trimming session might look like. Long before you actually start clipping nails, you probably engage in other tasks, such as sitting next to your dog on the floor or sitting facing your dog. If you're right-handed, you might lift your left hand and begin moving it towards your dog without touching him. You might touch your dog's paw with your left hand. You might place one of your dog's toes in between your fingers. You might pull back some of the hair on that toe with your thumb. And you might lean down to get a better view of the nail. Here you have at least 6 tasks that your dog would need to be desensitized to before you ever pick up a pair of clippers with your dominant hand. And each of the tasks that I just mentioned represents a separate individual DS session during which you'd be using the same techniques that you've been practicing, including pairing the task with something that your dog loves, like food, for example. You wouldn't advance to the next task until your dog shows that he's completely comfortable with the previous task. In a future lesson, we'll talk about putting an actual plan together, a step-by-step approach that you'll be able to use to begin helping your dog feel better about his scary thing. But for now, you need to know where you'll be starting. And you need to do all the work here because each of you has a very unique issue with your individual dogs. I can't tell you what the starting point will be. Your starting point, your plan, your progress will be different for each of you. Even if your dog being afraid of the car or afraid of unfamiliar men is a common problem for many of you, the intricacy of the issue is unique to your own dog. Now, check out the next lesson, number 11B, for a couple of demo videos illustrating these exercises and for your next assignment.